Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a preview. This one is for Station Master from Calliope Games. It is a 2 to 6 player game, all about loading up trains as efficiently as possible and trying to get them out of the stations on time.
This is a hand optimization game that's also going to have a little bit of bluffing and some deduction in here, because you're going to be either doing one of two things in this game: placing one of the passengers on one of these locomotives or train cars, or playing a card from your hand, trying to gain points when that car is filled up and the train moves to the next location.
Yeah, and as you can see, we've got here in front of us a bunch of cards. There's going to be locomotive cards, station master cards, which are effectively either the cars that are going to be played out or potentially some powerful cards that you can use one time. And then, of course, we're going to have our passengers in front of us. Each player is going to have 6 passengers in their color that will be going out onto these trains.
To be a little bit more in depth, there are 13 unique locomotive cards, and when those cards have a number of trains extended off them, they are going to be sent to the next location. Once all of them have done so, that is going to mark the end of the game. There's also one other type of card in the game, and that is your depot. Each player is going to get one of these depot cards that can be used during their turn as a special action. Now, once you use this depot card, you will no longer have that available for the rest of the turn, and it's going to add some very special scoring. We'll go over that in just a moment. However, at the start of the game, you're going to lay out an X number of locomotives equal to the number of players. We have a 6-player game, so there will be 6 of these that are laid out face up in front of you. None of these other cards will exist. These will be played during the course of the game. As David already alluded to, each player is going to have 6 of these tokens. These tokens are going to be represented with numbers from -1 all the way to 3. These are basically multipliers when those trains are going to score. Now, as we said, the game is very simple to play. At the start, each player is going to get 3 cards dealt to you from that Station Master deck. Those are going to represent train cars or possibly actions that you can take. The train cards come in a wide variety of different types. You have ones that are basically going to add positive values to that particular locomotive. There are ones that are going to add negative values to that locomotive, and there are a bunch of different actions as well.
Yeah, and before we get into the special action cards, let's talk a little bit about the structure of the game. On any player's turn, like Jeremy said earlier, you're going to be doing one of 2 things. You are either going to be playing one of those 3 cards out of your hand, and again, those may be played in different fashions. The cars are going to be played out next to the locomotives. The power cards are going to be played separately and discarded. Or you're going to be taking one of your passengers and adding it to one of the trains. Now, when you do this, the different locomotives are going to have a blue number up in the upper left-hand corner of the card. That dictates the number of passengers it can carry, also the number of cars it's going to have before it leaves the station. But when you play a passenger, you're going to simply look at it yourself and then play it face down on the locomotive.
Yes, so no one else is going to know the passenger number that you placed in that location. Again, you're doing one of those 2 very specific things. Now, if you play a card, a couple of different things are going to happen according to the card that you play. And cards come in a wide range of different abilities. There are cards that are going to add positive values to that locomotive. There are cards that are going to add negative values to that locomotive. There's cards that can do either or depending upon the locomotive that is pulling those cars. And there's a bunch of different action cards as well that can be played during a player's turn. One of these possible cards is the transfer card. This allows you to move passengers that have previously been placed from one location to another, either yours or another player's.
Yeah, and I have another one here called Repair. This is going to allow you to take the top 3 cards of the discard pile, take one of those cars, and immediately play it on a train. As you can tell, these powers are going to allow you to really change things up. There may be a train with all of its cars just shy of leaving the station, and you could play a card like this, bring out a card that may be somewhat unexpected to everyone else, add it to that train, and have it leave the station.
Now, what happens when a locomotive has a full set of cars? That will happen anytime you have a number of cars equal to the value on that locomotive. In this case, 3, and we count 3 different train cars attached to it. Once that happens, you're going to add up all the different positive and negative values on that train and get some kind of value. In this case, we have 6 minus 2, which is 4. We take that number and we multiply it by all the tokens that you see there for each individual player. So 4 times 2 is 8 points for white, 4 points for green, and another 8 points for red. You're going to add up all the tokens that you have in that location. You're going to mark that on a piece of paper or some other kind of substitute to keep track of your score. Then all the cars in that area are going to be removed and a new locomotive is going to go in that location, and all the tokens that were placed are going to come back to those players. Now, scoring can also happen at a very different time, and that's by using your one-time only depot. The depot has some rules attached to it. Number one, it can only be placed on a locomotive when at least 2 train cars are already existing in that area. So as you see here, there's 2 cars, but I could not play it on this one here. When that happens, you're going to immediately score all the tokens in this area according to the cars that are in that area as well. Once that happens, you're going to write down a piece of paper, and then the player that activated that area is allowed to take one of their tokens and place it on the depot. So this again will score when the actual amount has been reached on that car. So there are times in the game when some of the cars are going to score more than once.
Yeah, and as you can tell, you have that -1 token, so you're going to be able to get that out there. If someone's building on cars to a locomotive that have a bunch of negative numbers, thinking that you might have a positive number on there, you could sneakily have your -1 there and get some points that way. One other thing that kind of changes things up are a couple of different locomotives. There's the executive class locomotive and the freight locomotive. These are going to work a little bit differently. If there's a freight locomotive on the board, it's going to mess with everyone's minds because all of the green numbers, which are normally positive, will be negative, and vice versa. So you're going to be scoring those slightly differently. The executive class locomotives are going to actually use all the same cars as they normally would, plus if you put an executive class car on there, it will be positive points. Otherwise, an executive class car will be negative points on any other train.
So you're going to continue doing this, either placing a passenger face down or using one of your cards from your hand until all the locomotives have been placed on the board and all of them have been scored. At the end of the game, you're simply going to add up all those points, and the player with the most points is going to win the game. So that is Station Master from Calliope Games, a 2 to 6 player game with a lot of hand management as well as deduction, some bluffing going on as well. If you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Make sure you guys check out the Kickstarter page for all the final components, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.